But stars of opera Mopra did the exact opposite today while launching Dress Down Drug Free. Stealing the show with her rendition of I Am Woman was businessman Paul Murphy. The three tenors also proved their musical versatility, featuring lawyer Brian Doyle, radio personality Craig Hamilton and policeman Tony Tamplin.
Once known as a humble caravan park, a holiday park is now more accommodating than ever, and it's also profitable. Last year, 4 holiday parks managed by Port Stephens Council returned around $1.5 million in net profits. Now Council is aiming to go one better.
I think we have an obligation to make a profit in terms of we're managing this on behalf of the community and our ratepayers, and certainly our major objective is to generate income for the community in terms of new facilities, maintaining our beaches and the environment.
Over the next 2 days, representatives from 14 councils are brainstorming ways to increase cash returns from the parks without necessarily lifting prices. They're aiming to lure more tourists with accommodation packages, which includes cruises and visits to local attractions.
Summer looks after itself, but winter, there's still an awful lot to do in Port Stephens, and we need to get that out to people. So packaging is one of the best ways to do that.
Other ideas include increasing advertising over the internet and capitalising on the Sydney short stay market.
People don't have as much time to spend on holidays, and we find there's a high demand for people looking for short stay, accommodation on short notice.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
This is Julian Bailey and Daniel Abraham like you've never seen them before. Julian, the one in the green velour boxers, and Daniel in the white silkies, agreed to be covered in baby oil and to go a few rounds toe-to-toe for the upcoming Knights Men of Steel calendar. Snapped by a Sydney photographer and given boxing tips from veteran coach Wal Bentley, the boys took it all on the chin.
I think he got more on me than I did on him.
It was good, it was for the calendar, so it's still a good cause, it's going to telethon and stuff like that, but I'm not sure modeling's my career, mate. I'll stick to the footy paddock.
18 Knights players will be snapped at various locations over the weekend, with the calendar to be released in September. The Knights cheer girls will be photographed later in the year for their own calendar. And does Wal think the boys have a fighting chance?
Stick to football, maybe.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Bears were simply more disciplined. Strong running in the opening minutes by Ben Wolfe gave his side the go-forward needed to put the Seagulls on the back foot. But the Gulls were just as hungry, putting first points on the board when Nat Barnes snuck through the blind side to score in the corner. The Bears replied minutes later with the straight running Brett McConnell picking up an inside ball from Jamie O'Connor. In a seesawing match, O'Connor struck again for the Bears minutes later. But the Seagulls grabbed a 14-12 half-time lead, with Glenn Cummings crossing twice before the break. Burley left the Sheds looking the better side, rewarded with a soft try to James Slatter. And again off the high ball as McConnell scored his second of three. A professional foul by Marty Stone added to a frustrating night for the Seagulls, leaving them with 12 players to give the Bears another 2 points and a 10-minute advantage. A late comeback wasn't enough for the Seagulls, going down 30-26. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
The ground at HMS Nottingham has now spent 3 weeks off Lord Howe Island and is expected to be there for another week before it can be towed to Australia. The question then is where to take the vessel. Speculation suggests Newcastle and Four Jacks Dry Dock will be the destroyer's first port of call. The prospect of the repair work being done in the city has some excited.
It is a major repair which will take a significant period of time, and there are the skills and the numbers in Newcastle to handle it. I don't know how many workers we get a job, but it's highly skilled work and we can do it.
But the benefits of the region's expertise could flow further, especially with ADI Newcastle shortlisted for the Australian Defence Force contract to build patrol boats.
If it comes here to Newcastle to be repaired, that means the entire world know that we've got the capabilities to do defence projects and a major ship build, so that's very good for the hunter.
The repair work does bring a tricky and delicate job to remove and dispose of damaged munitions. The Royal New Zealand Navy website is reporting that among the compartments flooded when the vessel struck a reef was a Sea Dart missile magazine. Experts have warned that the missiles could blow up if allowed to dry out and would have to be transported still submerged in water before being disarmed. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
The students say the workshops are teaching them about dangers they never knew existed.
I knew a bit about it and stuff just from primary school and other classes, but no, not this much.
some already put off taking drugs.
It affects your whole life. As the lady said, you just have to steal and stuff to come up with the money.
Around 500 students taking part in 18 different workshops.
We've got a rock and water program, which is self-defence anger management course. We've got stress management, anti-smoking. We've got parent workshops on mental illness and health.
She says the workshops give students the knowledge they need to say no.
Sometimes they make poor choices in dealing with stresses in their lives because they really don't have the knowledge of what else they can do.
The workshops are part of a Commonwealth initiative for New South Wales schools to address drug issues with community members. They're the first to be held in the Lake Macquarie district. Police teaching these Years 7 and 8 students about drugs and the law. Parents too were encouraged to attend.
Because they don't understand a lot of it and they need to be able to help their children, and hopefully this forum is going to do that for them.
Eloise Gentle, NBN News. The four boys are thrilled at winning the Hard Rock Cafe Future Rock competition in Sydney, saying around 1,000 bands entered and the competition was tough.
It's really lifted the spirits of the boys and the band also. It was just a fantastic experience to be going down to Sydney and playing in front of a lot of reputable people.
Their song Grey Sky's End is already popular with fans. They've been together for 6 years and never expected to achieve so much.
We all dug music and were really keen to bash out a few new songs, and particularly our own songs, but we never ever thought it would go this far.
Part of their prize is 4 days recording at Sony in Sydney, and if all goes well, they might be offered a recording contract.
Part of the contract was Sony had the first rights to negotiate a recording contract with us, so if all goes well, let's with our fingers crossed, it could come off for us.
And this isn't the first win they've had.
Yeah, we won the National Rocket Song Competition. We were state finalists in 1999, the Rocker Stepford competition.
Eloise Gentle, NBN News.
With the Country Cockatoos trailing by 2 points in the dying minutes, fullback Nathan Croft says he just threw the ball up, closed his eyes and had a swing, and it worked.
You know, everybody once in their lifetime wants to do something like that, and just happy about it happening in the final and to put the score the right way around.
The kick capped off a real team effort to come back from 24-8 down at the break, although coach Alan Barker just wishes it had happened sooner.
Especially when you get in front for the first time in the game with in the first minute of injury time, and then you've got to play another 7 minutes of injury time. It's really nail-biting stuff.
It was Barker's first campaign with the Cockatoos, and it's now hoped the core of the side will return for a shot at a third title. To Aussie rules, and Terrigal Avoca continues to dominate the Black Diamond competition, beating third-place City at the weekend. Cardiff and Nelson Bay also notched up wins, while West Newcastle Wallsend won the Battle of the Cellar Dwellers. And in Group 21 Rugby League, last-placed Aberdeen found itself outclassed by the ladder leader Muswellbrook, while Singleton upset the second-place Denman.
It seems many people now think a ride in an ambulance is a fast-track way of getting seen by a doctor in hospital. But they're wrong.
It's a triage system in hospitals where the sickest people get seen first. So if you come in with a cough and a cold, you're either going to wait on an ambulance bed or you're going to wait in the waiting room.
The Health and Research Employees Association says 000 calls are increasingly being made for something as minor as a common cold. And because ambulance officers cannot refuse to take someone to hospital, it means there's an even greater backlog of patients in emergency departments. Because ambulance officers must remain at the hospital until their patients are seen for treatment, according to the union, the wait can now be as long as up to 6 hours on a weekday or 10 hours on a weekend. And the wait for a hospital bed has been especially frustrating for those with a serious illness.
We finally got to a point where people are just sick of waiting and we're taking them back home without being seen by medical practitioners in the hospital system.
While additional acute beds have been opened in the Hunter this winter, these beds are also being used for those waiting placement in an aged care facility.
At the moment we have around 30 people in our acute hospitals who are awaiting placement. That's impacting quite significantly on our ability to care for people through the emergency departments.
We need more ward beds so that the A&E can shuffle the people through into the wards and ambulances don't have to wait. They have to be able to get back on the road and do the job they're tasked for.
It's the second time the issue has risen. The four money clubs from the Central Coast Rugby League, Wyong, Woy Woy, the Entrance and Erina, are once again searching for a more level playing field. But the Newcastle Rugby League isn't interested, saying it has to nurture its own clubs before propping up another competition. Last night, Country Rugby League CEO David Barnhill put the pros and cons of the idea to the Newcastle Rugby League before leaving it to the existing clubs to vote on the outcome. The decision was unanimous.
The concerns of our clubs, maintaining our clubs. Would we be able to maintain our district clubs if we brought in these four other stronger clubs? And that was a big concern.
Central Coast boss Terry Wan says he's disappointed, but now it's time to look at other avenues.
We just felt that there could have been something very, very good come out of it, but that's their choice, that's okay.
Also of concern to the NRL, a lack of planning. It felt creating a so-called level playing field in Newcastle was just shifting the problems of the Central Coast comp further north.
We never got down to an actual proposal of how the competition structure would be set up, but just on its own, 4 teams bring in an extra 8 rounds, so there would have had to have been a change in our structure of how the competition's run.
Central Coast will now look at other ideas.
I've said all along, we've got the cattle, but we just got them in the wrong paddock at the moment. We're looking at the possibility of expanding the base of our junior competitions, which in long term will strengthen the First Division clubs.
Stephen Mount, NBN News. Bruised but not totally battered, the Knights have been faced with a short week to prepare for their clash with the Dragons, but Josh Perry says they're ready.
I really don't think that's going to worry us at all. I think, after this morning we've watched the video and we had a good training session this morning. I think everyone's feeling pretty good now and we'll definitely be rough Friday night.
And coach Michael Hagan is expecting the Dragons to be every bit as physical as the Bulldogs were.
I think Riles and Bailey would have something to say about how physical it's going to be up front, and Lance Thompson if he plays, and Brent Kite in the back row. So I think it's going to be another terrific game of football on Friday.
Hagan has named his starting side, which includes Robbie O'Davis. His inclusion sees Kurt Gidley back on the bench, alongside Daniel Abraham, who's also returning from injury.
When Melissa Kelman and Shelley Stewart took their 4-week-old daughters to the Muswellbrook Community Health Centre this week, they created history. The girls were the first to be tested with the new auditory brainstem response baby scanner, which can detect deafness and hearing-related ailments. The test gives parents an important first indication about their children's sense of hearing.
Yes, and eyes too, but hearing's the most you worry about.
The Upper Hunter Signing Choir raised half of the $20,000 for the machine, with the Newcastle Variety Club chipping in the balance. Choir founder Tess O'Brien believes the screening will make a huge difference for families, especially those with a deaf or hearing impaired child.
They will know instantly whether or not their child has a hearing problem or a hearing related disease, and then they can be referred immediately on to the appropriate professionals.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
The Newcastle Regional Museum has been activating minds, young and old, for 14 years, after being officially opened by the Queen in 1988. But a plan to relocate it to these former rail workshops at Honeysuckle is proving divisive. Last night, a public meeting heard details of 2 consultant reports which found in favour of relocating the museum and selling off the old site for development. They argued museum attendances were sharply declining and the cost of maintaining 2 separate museums would be too high. With construction on the waterfront Crown Plaza Hotel and restaurants already well underway, the report says moving the museum and integrating it with the BHP Steel exhibition will help create a cultural heart for the city.
It's not a question of finding out the cheapest option, it's a question of finding out the best option and what's going to be sustainable for that facility over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
But architect Brian Suiters, who won accolades for his original museum design, is opposing any move.
Basically because we've got a well-established museum here which has functioned very well for 14 years with high figures of visitations. It's a great set of buildings, and the buildings themselves embody a lot of what the museum stands for.
Those who have an opinion are invited to make submissions over the next 6 weeks. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Danny Edwards was riding a horse before most of us were born.
1928 I won the Australasian Championship in Merriwar.
While back then he was known for his buck jumping, today at 101 years of age, he was again blazing the trail, this time for the Morpeth Medicine charity horse ride. The 20-kilometre adventure set off from Morpeth. The riders then made their way to Duckenfield to rest the horses for lunch. This year the ride is raising money for the NBN Telethon, but riding is easy for the participants compared to the actual task of collecting the cash.
Going around asking people, knocking on doors, making phone calls, just a general routine. It's all hard work. There's nothing easy about it.
Sisters Nicole and Erin Smith managed to raise over $5,000 last year and were back in the saddle today.
My friends lost her mum to cancer, so that kind of got us going a bit, so yeah.
Riding for the disabled will also benefit from the event. It helps improve the quality of life for hundreds of people like Alicia Pepperell.
They're just different when they get on, and the horse gives them plenty of physio. They just get a lot of enjoyment out of riding and driving.
And as for Denny, today's country ride was a chance to relive a past he thought was forgotten.
And it's lovely to see people so much interested in it. It builds me up.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Maitland got off to the right start at North Wyong, Theo Grushka beating Gosford's keeper to score the opening goal. But the last place locals soon struck back to take a 2-1 lead at the break, Maitland recovering in the second half to win 3-2. The victory sees the Hunter side step up to third on the ladder, crucial when the first three get the chance for a home semi-final. That's still 5 rounds away, but South and Phoenix North at least are looking increasingly comfortable at the top. In the Icebound game, meanwhile, second-placed Adelaide proved too strong for the North Stars in round 15 of the National League. Brett Hillier, though, continues to shine for Newcastle, with 2 more goals helping him maintain the lead in the scorers' race. There were plenty of points on the board in Group 21 Rugby League over the weekend, with Muswellbrook thrashing nearest rival Denman and Scone doing much the same to Aberdeen. And in the Black Diamond AFL, Terrigal Avoca proved too strong for Newcastle City. The Bombers beat Gosford in a thriller, Nelson Bay annihilated West Newcastle Walls End, while the Hawks humbled Warners Bay.
From the outside, the Rankin Park Aged Care Unit looks much the same, but inside it's vastly different to how it looked previously. The new look $6 million facility brings together services like the Dementia Unit, the Aged Care Assessment Team and the day hospital that were located at different sites.
Just being here to communicate with the different services. A lot of our patients go through all those services, so we can communicate better and it will improve the continuity of care of the patient.
The project was due to be completed 6 months ago. The budget also blew out by $1 million.
They did find some asbestos, but that's all been taken out now, and that did delay us by about 6 months, but we're over that now and we're coming back to a very clean building.
One of the new features includes an independent living unit, which enables elderly patients to trial living by themselves under the discreet supervision of nursing staff.
So it's a really good test to see if they can manage at home before they go.
Patients and staff will move into the 40-bed centre from their temporary home at the Royal on August 12. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
As HMS Nottingham continues to weather rough conditions off Lord Howe Island, a storm has been brewing over the vessel's arrival in Newcastle later this week. Newcastle councillor Yvonne Piddington today questioning the plan to unload and dispose of Sea Dart missiles from the warship.
I'm asking questions as a councillor of the city, how they are going to be unloaded, on what streets of our city are they going through, and where the ship in fact is going to be berthed.
The Royal Navy says the munitions are safely stored and in a stable condition. Lord Mayor John Tate says he's satisfied the operation poses no threat to residents.
It won't come in here unless it is completely safe. Now, the negotiations are extensive. The Commonwealth will issue a licence before it arrives here for the ship to come in. That licence will set out the degrees of what has to be done.
While there's been speculation about what will happen with the Nottingham's munitions after they're unloaded in Newcastle, our Defence Force is yet to outline its role in the impending salvage operation. A Defence spokesperson would only say today that our personnel will provide expert advice on munitions handling. Gary Blair, NBN News.
"16-year-old Casey Stoner is preparing for more than just his next race. He's considered Australia's brightest new hope in a sport where names like Doohan and Gardner are famous the world over.
I'm only just starting, so hopefully I've got quite a long time left in there. But yeah, it's definitely quite amazing to finally be where I've always wanted to be.
Right now, Stoner's attracting attention in the 250cc World Championship. And although a podium finish has eluded the former Maitland rider, he's already the youngest ever competitor to score points in a 250cc Grand Prix. But there's been plenty of sacrifices made, especially by his parents. The whole family is now based in Spain in an effort to give Stoner every chance of success.
I'm actually very appreciative of my parents. They've given up just about everything just so we could go to Europe 2 years ago and start racing. We didn't know how well I was going to go. We luckily found a sponsor over there that helped us out a lot, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to be where we are now.
The Italian Oxido racing team rider is looking forward to the remaining 7 races of the season, including his home GP in October. But staying on the bike is proving an equally attractive prospect after some spectacular crashes this year.
Trying to get up and get out of the road as quick as possible in case somebody else crashes.
Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Correction to that, the victim has been spoken to by the... I will see what we can do.
Up 1-0 early, courtesy of Michael Markovski, Lambton was keen to increase the advantage, but having never made it this far before, Alstonville wasn't about to lie down. Goalkeeper Hugh Darnell, though, couldn't stop everything, Ben Ahern bagging the home side's second. Play was briefly suspended shortly after due to a sickening elbow injury to Lambton's Dale Sheehan. His teammates seemed extra determined in the second half, Ben Ahern making his next goal look all too easy. That blemish aside, Alstonville's defence continued to be inspired, but the second one-on-one fell Lambton's way, Ahern getting his hat-trick. Down 4-0 to the hosts, the North Coasters kept trying, but in the end it was Lambton that found the net again, Brendan Willis sealing a 5-0 win and booking his school a quarter-final berth against the winner of tomorrow's clash between Hunter Sports High and St Dominic's Penrith. Brothers in blood, if no longer in arms, Andrew John spoke with Matthew last night, and after hearing all about the pinched nerve problem being suffered by his older sibling, he doesn't care to see him in the 5/8 jersey this week.
I think he's going to have a couple of weeks off, and probably happy with that because might have to take it easy on him after seeing him get carried off in the stretcher last week. It was shocking.
Matthew or no Matthew, the Knights halfback will have another match-up to worry about come Sunday, with old rival Brett Camorley again showing form.
I'd say whoever fires most out of me and Brett will probably win the game, so hopefully it's me.
The squad endured a lengthy training session today with John Morris the only question mark, and while Ben Kennedy was present for the duration, Michael Hagan says he won't be a surprise inclusion.
He's still got to get some strength back in his shoulder before we even consider him probably for next week. So, I mean, he's coming on very well though and training the house down, so we're looking forward to getting him back in the next week or two.
And with Mark Hughes and Matt Parsons already being welcomed back, the side's starting to regain a familiar feeling.
I think we're warming up to something special and hopefully get the old combinations going on Sunday.
On playing fields around the country at the weekend, thousands of people can be seen enjoying soccer. Of all those competing, 20% are female, but of late last week, they're now without a national governing body. Women's Soccer Australia has gone into liquidation and the second Pacific Cup has been cancelled.
Accommodation had been arranged, travel was arranged, venues were arranged, everything was absolutely in place, and then Soccer Australia pulled the pin on us last Friday.
Soccer Australia today didn't want to comment on its decision to cancel the Pacific Cup or on the demise of Women's Soccer Australia. The tournament was to feature teams from South Africa, South Korea and the world number 2, China. Games were to be played at venues in Sydney, the Central Coast and Newcastle, with the finals to be at the International Stadium in Coffs Harbour, where the Matildas have previously enjoyed huge support. Also under threat is the under-14s and 17s national titles, also at Coffs Harbour in September, but the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation says if worse comes to worse, it'll guarantee that event. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
There was no wiping the smiles from Michelle and Lloyd Moffat's faces today as they continued to celebrate their court win. The District Court found Port Stephens Council had negligently allowed development under military flight paths and had failed to warn property owners of potential noise impacts.
The next step for us from here is a directions hearing in Newcastle District Court in 2 weeks' time, where the issue of costs will be addressed, and set a timetable to run the rest of the matter.
That matter being the question of compensation and just how much. The Moffats are still hoping Council will come to the bargaining table.
The smart thing for Council would be certainly to come to the table to discuss it, rather than keep expending more of the ratepayers' funds to fight a fight that they have already lost.
The decision could have wide-ranging repercussions in Port Stephens, where many people claim increased noise from RAF operations is adversely affecting their property values and lifestyle.
They're going to have to come to some resolution. They're going to have to take action, and this will now force them to take action.
In a written statement, Port Stephens Council says it will review the reasons for the findings and seek further legal advice. Today, the Moffats also lodged a compensation claim with the Department of Defence. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
No stranger to controversy, top jockey Alan Robinson was not required to appear at Newcastle Local Court today to face an assault charge. According to police evidence, he was kicked out of the MJ Finnegan's Hotel in Newcastle around 12:30am on the 10th of April. He and his wife, along with a group of friends, had been drinking in a bar upstairs when Robinson and others became embroiled in an altercation. The sporting identity and an unnamed man were thrown out of the club. Robinson was then involved in a second altercation on the footpath outside with the unnamed man's friend. It's alleged Robinson kicked the man in the head as he lay on the ground, but the top jockey argues at the time the man was biting him on the ankle. The victim suffered swelling and bruising to his right temple and arm and claims his teeth were chipped during the incident. Robinson will have to appear for a one-day hearing on December 12th. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Well, what people can expect with Swig is to come into the wine centre for the first time. There's going to be 20 vignerons here from throughout the Hunter Valley.
With yesterday's victory by Broadmeadow forcing Cessnock into a must-win situation for a home semi, Craig Beckett went some way to securing the prize in the opening minutes. Despite a flurry of further shots, neither side found the back of the net for the remainder of the first half. The second started in much the same way, but while Chad Mansley's next attempt wasn't as pretty, it certainly did the job. 1-1, and suddenly arrested Tony Majerowski was being brought on in a game that Highfields didn't need to win, but the prolific goal scorer only had to watch as Paul Wheeler unleashed some long-range magic. Just when Cessnock was looking beaten, Justin Kavanagh found some space to again draw level, but the Wolves again took charge, a Wheeler cross finding Mansley and a favourable deflection to silence the Hornets 3-2. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
The question about the issues on the minds of Newcastle's teenagers and young adults was posed by federal Newcastle MP Sharon Grierson. The answers compiled over recent months were unveiled today at Callaghan College, Waratah. Better funding for all levels of education and the Commonwealth's need to create more jobs and provide greater help for job seekers rated as the greatest concerns. The consensus on finding a job: leave Newcastle.
Yeah, I do feel that way, and it's sad because I love Newcastle and I don't want to leave, but it looks like you'll have to.
the city's lack of highly skilled jobs seen as a reason to leave.
There's not that many jobs or secure jobs for higher educated people around Newcastle. So there's mainly just labouring jobs and things like that.
Sharon Grierson believes Newcastle should be saddened by the finding.
They remain optimistic that they will get a job, but they do say overwhelmingly that they'll have to leave Newcastle to get that job.
Young people have also put safety on the streets of Newcastle back into the spotlight. They've expressed concern about gangs roaming the streets and called for the city to be made more safe and secure. Newcastle Council, the state and federal governments will now be asked to act on the report. Gary Blair, NBN News. From dockside, HMS Nottingham looks like any other ship in Newcastle Harbour. However, like all warships, appearance is deceptive. In the 3 days since entering port, remaining food supplies have already been removed and the ship's divers have started making a better assessment of the damaged hull. For the 26-member duty watch manning the destroyer, their attention tomorrow turns to removing ammunition.
Those that we know for certain have not been affected by the incident in any way, and those are the ones which will be lifted off first.
The Nottingham's lethal firepower, a magazine of Sea Dart missiles and 114mm gun shells, all stored in the ship's flooded forward compartment, will be removed later in the 3-week operation.
The significance is, of course, that they're currently in a flooded compartment, so clearly they've not been allowed to dry out. We don't anticipate that there'll be a problem with them, but obviously we're erring on the side of caution, so we plan for the worst-case scenario.
Lieutenant Commander Mackenzie Philps says the future of the munitions will be decided at Singleton Army Base.
What I can say is obviously they'll be guarded closely at Singleton and returned to the UK in due course, and then those which require to be disposed of will be disposed of at Singleton.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Professors Eric Kennedy and Bogdan Jagorsky both head a scientific team at Newcastle University. They've discovered how to neutralise chemicals most responsible for destroying the Earth's ozone layer.
We started about 6 years ago. We started off fairly small. We had an idea and we did some experiments. It was promising and it's just kind of built since then, I guess.
Ozone-depleting substances known as halons found in fire extinguishers and CFCs found in fridges are banned in Australia and will be illegal in most other countries by the end of the year. The problem is there will be a huge stockpile of extinguishers and the existing method of treating the chemicals causes pollution. Enter the Newcastle research team.
The hub of what we've done is really to take these materials and develop a process whereby we don't destroy the materials, but we actually convert the materials into something that's useful.
The research this week won the prestigious Sherman Eureka Science Prize. But even bigger, in January next year, scientists from America's Environment Protection Authority will join the team. They hope to build a $6 million plant in the United States within a year to trial the conversion method. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Culpeth Gallery has been virtually knee-deep in bubble wrap as the more than 4,500 works of art were prepared for display. This year the exhibition features British teapots made to mark the Golden Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. Coachloads of teapot enthusiasts from across northern New South Wales and specialist collectors from around Australia will converge on Morpeth over the next 2 weeks to see the unique collection.